Very good evening to everybody and welcome to this next on our live stream series. This is Christopher Duigan on Wednesday the 12th of May in our piano hour, our Wednesday piano hour session, hoping that you can join us for the next hour or so when I am going to be answering a number of questions. I'm taking deep breaths because I'm going to be talking a lot this evening. There's going to be a lot of chat, a lot of discussion, and hopefully some very interesting information. I hope it's interesting because these are all questions that have been posed and presented by our viewers and our listeners that have come in the last few weeks. I asked in one of our mailing lists and on our recent programs for people to submit queries and questions about the music, about the live streams, about what I'm doing, about what I'm playing. Anything that there is really a question about that I might be able to explain or help you understand. And so this evening I am going to be dealing with a number of issues. There are 6 issues in total, and I am going to actually tell you what they are, just so that you know. I'm going to be talking about how I choose my programs. I'm going to be answering a query about the difference between what makes a minuet, or what a minuet is, and the difference between a tango and a habanero. How musical memory works. Many people have asked how I remember all this music and how that actually operates. Somebody asked, Sheila Pietermaritzburg asked about key choices and why composers would play or compose in different keys and how that actually works, whether there's a different character. I'm going to be answering a query about what being a Steinway artist really is and what that entails, and also asking a number of people have asked about what this live stream series, what the live stream program has really meant to me and what my experience of it has been. I've heard many things from you, the listeners and the viewers, about how you've experienced these live stream programs and how you've enjoyed them, especially the fact that they're so regular. Every Wednesday and every Saturday we're coming to you in the comfort of your home at 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. here. And hoping that you're still enjoying the series, and also thankful and grateful for all of those who are supporting us. And if you're not, very grateful if you are able to purchase a ticket or send a donation through or support to keep these live stream programs going. So I am going to dive in straight off to the first question, the first issue, which is how do I compile a program, or what processes do I think about when I'm trying to compile these programs. So first of all, there are 2 issues. The programs, I'm going to present 2 programs. The one on Wednesday, the piano hour, is more informal. It's more about world music. It's music from different cultures and very different genres and from different places around the world. I try to keep it light and quite entertaining and broad. And the programs on Saturday are more classical programs that focus on the strictly classical piano repertoire. So for the Wednesday programs, I've been presenting programs like this that feature a number of different styles of music for many, many years. When I started Music Revival about 27 years ago, I was aware of the fact that as a pianist, a classical pianist, I was often quite separated or had this dislocation between many of the people in the community around me, in many backgrounds. Because classical piano repertoire, classical piano recitals really depend on the pianist playing the great masterworks, appearing on stage in big black piano, large great concert hall, performing great masterpieces, maybe with program notes, not saying a word to the audience and then disappearing. And if you've grown up or you have a great knowledge or understanding of that, they can all be very enticing, and I'm sure for many people that works. But I was aware that there were many people around me who had very little experience of that and wanted, perhaps, and I felt I wanted to present something that was more engaging and maybe opened up something of this experience for the first time. And I did this by doing several things. First of all, by talking to an audience, which is still what I'm doing and what I'm doing right now. Secondly, by choosing parts of the classical piano repertoire that more people might be familiar with. In other words, there are great masterworks and there are pieces of classical music which are more popular, which are known to a broader section of the audience through various things, through film, through popular selections of music, through adverts sometimes. And we all like to go to a concert and go to a musical experience and like to hear music that we hear. I mean, part of the thing about recorded music, which is so fascinating, is that we tend to listen to the same recordings again and again, whether it's popular music, we all listen to the albums that we love of the artists, popular artists we love, or even in terms of classical music, we actually listen to the same records and the same recordings and the same performances by the same people again and again, and often we get to know the performance more than the music. So by doing this and bringing something that people are familiar with in terms of the classical repertoire was one aspect. The other is I decided to try and explore my interest and present my interest in that I'm fascinated about the fact that the piano is such a crucial instrument and central part of music in so many different cultures. For instance, the tango repertoire, the area of Scott Joplin and ragtime, some jazz performers, the great music written by the great jazz pianists, film music, contemporary sort of new age music people might call it. And all of this has been written. These are actually written scores. It's not necessarily improvised. I'm not a jazz pianist. I don't improvise as a set. It's not really a skill that I've studied. It's something. But there is a lot of music written for piano that I felt, well, this was still had substance and interest, and if I presented it with the integrity, and that's a word that crops up a lot in what I'm trying to do, with the integrity of what it is, that it in fact might appeal to an audience, and people might be more familiar with it, it might make them feel part of the process. And by talking them through the program and explaining something about the history, the context, the composer, what the music is about, maybe points they could listen to or listen out for, it really brought myself and an audience closer together, and also to present music in situations that were not necessarily great concert halls, maybe private homes, people's gardens, my own home, just situations where people could gather together and enjoy music together. I see Lucy's appeared with one of my socks. Hello, Luce. It's a very blue sock, but full of holes. Still wear it though. So, having done that for 27 years, the idea of these piano hour performances really brings together all those aspects in the same way, but on a live stream. Having said that, I'm also then very interested in trying to balance. It's very important to try and balance a program. And if you look at all of those different types of music and see exactly what they present, the idea is to try and balance the musical aspects of it. So for instance, the music, the ragtimes of Scott Joplin present a very strident rhythmic aspect. For instance, in his Maple Leaf Rag, there's a very rhythmic element to that, whereas opposed to the music of Claude Debussy, maybe might be more flowing. Completely different texture and a completely different feel. I'm also then looking at, even within the classical repertoire, how we can use music from different style periods, from the 17th, 18th, 19th, and possibly even the 20th century. Each of them have different styles, and also a different color or a different texture, a different lightness. So for instance, the music of the Baroque composers like the famous Louis Daquin Le Coucou, has a very different texture and a very different feel, say, to a Rachmaninoff prelude. Even though they still have the same rhythm and the same definition of rhythm. Another element that one can look at is terms of speed and the terms of excitement. For instance, Flight of the Bumblebee. Has a very different speed and a very different aural landscape than, say, the Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven. Even within that, there's a very different emotional world and a very different depth. For instance, even the Beethoven that you compare, there's a real piece of great emotional depth, has maybe a very different feel to something which is just lighter and atmospheric, like music of Enya. And so by taking the audience through this roller coaster of emotions, of textures, of sound worlds, of sound landscapes, one is able to build a contrast. The other element of it, which as a classical pianist everyone always expects, of course, is a great sense of virtuosity, and for me to really work hard. Somehow people often say they feel very cheated if I haven't played something of real brilliance and excitement. So, for instance, which is a piece of Beethoven from the Moonlight Sonata, or the famous La Campanella. Everyone likes to see me work hard. That's very exciting, but that's actually what Liszt intended. It is exciting music to listen to. So any program that I try to compile, I try to look at these different textures and the rhythms, the melodies, the popularity, familiar pieces, unfamiliar pieces, and try to balance them just through a sense, a kind of understanding of how things might balance and bring all these different facets together. In the classical programs, which I then play on Saturday nights, is a little bit more standard. I'm sticking generally to the main classical repertoire. I don't ending with the romantic composers of the 19th century, playing up to Rachmaninoff. I'm not really venturing into things like the 20th century music, because that's just a different field. It really requires a largely a different engagement, and I think especially in these live streams, it's not really going to work. I've compiled programs that focus on specific composers. For instance, an all Chopin program or an all Liszt program. I'm playing an all Liszt program this Saturday night, which is going to be very, very exciting. I've programmed selections which are very standard pieces, which are very well-known classical pieces, and then also looked at the repertoire and presented programs which are then focusing on less often heard or seldom heard pieces of music, really trying to bring to you as an audience pieces of music you might be less familiar with, either even for piano connoisseurs and even for people who attend or know a lot about classical music. I'm fascinated about the hidden gems in the back. And at the same time, I'm still trying to find and look at that idea of textures and looking at different style periods and times, the excitements, or to find a theme. Sometimes it's useful to find a theme that is an all sort of autumnal or quite a melancholic theme which might run through a program. One doesn't want to overdo it, or one doesn't want to play a program that's all too exciting, because it could be a bit overwhelming for everyone, including the pianist. It's quite hard work playing a whole program of Liszt for the one technical minefield after another, but it's all good work and comes out in the end. So that's briefly how I compile the programs. It's really based on the instinct and the spontaneous feel that I sense in the music, and try to create threads, and also try to create contrasts, try to create something of a movement through the program. As famous musician Thomas Beecham said, it's very important how a concert starts and ends. What happens in the middle, no one cares about, no one remembers, which is quite true. So a good opening piece, a good starting piece is usually very important, and something to end with on a very solid, exciting note is a brilliant way to end. One doesn't want to end in a very dissolute or calm, uncertain way that's really sending everyone home or ending the stream on a very uncertain note. So I am going to play for you a piece of music now. There is going to be music this evening, and as I said, Scott Joplin is a very good way to start a program. I'd like to play for you Scott Joplin's very exciting Elite Syncopations. got Joplin's very jaunty elite syncopations full of syncopated rhythms, very jagged edge, very brilliant sound, very excited sound, very steady march pattern in the left hand, very syncopated sounds in the right hand, full of detail and edge. And of course, as I said, very strong start to the program and a very different feel to, say, you couldn't get two more contrasted pieces of music if you tried. And isn't music wonderful that in just those few notes, a completely different sound world is created? You all know that Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy takes you into a completely another magical place. I couldn't help thinking while I was playing that something I was reminded of very recently happened to me, rather, not unfortunate, but rather trying experience. I've always felt that this idea of playing during a performance, or talking during a performance, as much as it can be very interesting for an audience, is actually very, very difficult for a performer. And I used to find that in many concerts, I would either felt I was more comfortable playing or more connected to the playing and really battled to talk. I really battled to talk in my life many times. Or sometimes I could talk quite comfortably, but then I didn't feel so attached to the playing. And I recently had an experience where I had to play some really, really difficult music from the start and had quite a lot to say beforehand, and it didn't go very well. And I was reminded, and I've done research and reading about this, that in fact it's quite stands to reason, obviously, that one's brain acts and has a certain thought process when you're talking, and you create this rhythm and you create a sense of comfortability. And when you start playing, it's almost like it's going in completely the opposite direction. And it takes a while for it to fall into place and to sync. And so if anything goes wrong tonight, because I'm going to be talking a lot, it happens. This is just going to be the way it is. I'll be doing my best in my playing, but that might happen. It might just work out. Now, I had a request, two requests to ask about the details of what exactly is a minuet. I played a minuet in the Sonata by Mozart a week or two ago, and also a request to explain what I meant about the difference between a tango and a habanero. I was about to say a hango. I don't know what that is. That's something else. So, a minuet is a dance. Comes from the courtly dance, from the 18th century court dances. It is a dance that people would have originally danced to. I think it would have been very popular, one of the standard, very basic dances. It has 3 beats to a bar, or 3 beats on a measure, just like a waltz, and it's a very moderate, elegant pace. So for instance, I'm going to give you some examples of minuets by Bach. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you see a very regular pacing in the rhythm with 1, 2, 3, very steady, very elegant, and very few notes. Very bum 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 bum. Mozart, for instance, his very first compositions that he had wrote when I think was just 3 or 4 years old, 2 minuets. Very simple, elegant music with a very steady pace that couples would have danced to very specific steps. In the music of Mozart, as he matured and as he grew up, I think there's a more specific style that also comes through in the music of Beethoven, and that is you hear a slightly dotted note or rhythm at the beginning. So for instance, the piece which I am going to play for you, This is the minuet from the Sonata K282, and you'll see this is what you call a dotted rhythm. This long note followed by a short note. Dotted rhythm there. You'll find it in other situations, for instance, in the music of Beethoven. The other minuet which I played recently, Beethoven. And of course, Beethoven's famous minuet that he wrote, actually an orchestral minuet when he was 17 years old or 16. Even as a somewhat of a pastiche party piece, the great Polish pianist, 20th century Polish pianist Paderewski wrote his own minuet. As that's not really written in the correct style period, you can say that's more of a little bit of a waltz there, or even a Ländler, which is related. The difference then between a minuet and a waltz, the waltz comes from the minuet, the waltz 3 beats in a bar, so the same 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. A little bit lighter, a little bit more emphasis maybe on the first beat and the lightness on the second and third, and a broad melody. Tchaikovsky, etc. Or should play that piece one day. That's the very famous valse, the waltz from Gounod's opera Faust, as transcribed by Liszt. So this broad 3 in a bar, sort of later romantic style, but the lightness and the elegance of the minuet really belongs to the time of Bach, Mozart, and early Beethoven. A very steady dance with 3 beats in a bar and a very elegant and graceful feel. The second question that was asked about the difference between the elements of a tango and a habanero. And this is a very complicated question, which I've been doing quite a lot of research on, and no one seems to have a definite answer about it. Tango really is a style of music which originates between Argentina and Uruguay. It is a combination as many situations that one finds in this kind of cross-culturalization of music, principally brought about through the rhythms of the African slaves that found themselves in Cuba, in America, and North America and South America. And so the tango is really a mix that came out of a very rural style, you might say, a very music of the people that mixed these rhythms with a more traditional, popular European style of music. And one of the interesting rhythms that seem to have really come through in all these places, which has been traced back to apparently the West African regions, is a kind of cross rhythm which sounds like this. And the slight unusual middle Jaunt gives a lot of this music even in the ragtime. That's where that syncopation you'll find comes from. But then in South America, this combination of African rhythm and European rhythm eventually finds itself in a sort of tango. There are many types of tangos, there are many types of styles of tangos with different rhythms. That's certainly one of them. And in the case of the Cuban habanera, the same rhythm, but in a very slow style and a very... And what's so interesting is how these dances originate sometimes in very poor communities and rural communities amongst the people, in the dance halls. They spread through the urban cities and then are somehow sent back to Europe through sailors, people traveling back and forth. It's interesting to see how music and food can travel back, and cultural elements like avocados, tomatoes coming from South America to Europe. In the same way, the tango, habanera, and all these dances were sent back to Europe, reintroduced into the culture and popularized in a different way. So for instance, the Cuban habanera, or Havana, from Havana, habanera, finds itself in classical music, in composers like Chabrier, French composer Georges Bizet, when he wrote his opera in Spanish style, trying to capture the heart of Spanish music. He wrote Carmen Habanera. And one of the most famous habaneras from Spain, and it's interesting that this style of music is particularly found in the area around Barcelona, with the sailors who traveled between Cuba and South America back to Barcelona in Catalan culture. You find this particular habaneran singing of men singing together, the sailors, and always with the same unique combination of being two notes apart. So for instance, one of the famous pieces would be La Paloma. So for instance, if you play one melody, one note, that's the melody, but the second voice sings a third below. By the Spanish composer Sebastián Iradier, the La Paloma, a very famous piece of music. So that's really the habanera. The tango itself, in South America, as I say, there are various types of tango. This rhythm between Argentina and Uruguay ends up being that same unique offbeat in the middle of the music, La Comparsita, one of the most famous, or possibly the most famous tango of all time. In the same way, some of the music of Piazzolla, which is more not, I think there are various, from what I understand and what I've identified, various tango rhythms, that being one of them. Another one being so the much despised Hernando's Hideaway, despised by most tango musicians I know. And Piazzolla writes in a more steady tango, a more steady fornabar. So there are various tango elements, there are various tango rhythms that are not always exactly the same. Just to complicate things, when we talk about tango music, we actually can talk about I'm playing a tango, but it's actually authentically a milonga, which is a related type of Argentinian dance, like I played last week by Julian Plaza. See that same bum, ba-dum, bum, bum pattern in the left hand, but they actually call that a milonga. So generally, tango could be various rhythms, two beats in a bar, sometimes with that accented fourth, which I think is more the ballroom tango, or the authentic, or various possibilities. Just to confuse everything, and I think this is where this question arose, why Jerry and Allison, who asked about this, is the Spanish composer Isaac Albeniz wrote a very famous piece, which I'm going to play for you, which sounds like this. So you think, well, that sounds like a habanero. That's the same gentleness. Albeniz being Catalan, this must be a habanero. Well, unfortunately, he calls it a tango in his title. That's what he just said, this is a tango. So it seems that possibly at some point the rhythmic styles or the words might be subtly interchangeable. What is distracting about calling that music tango, I've heard certain musicians see the word tango and think, so they'll play. With these very short and abrupt staccatos, thinking this is what tango music should be, but I think that's completely incorrect. I think it's not what he writes, certainly not in the original piano part, and that seems to be not in keeping with the actual style of the music. So to explain or to throw these two ideas together, I'm going to play for you the Minuets 1 and 2 from Mozart's Sonata K282. Just to give you an idea again of the minuet, and then the famous tango, which I've just played for you by Isaac Albeniz. the celebrated Tango, very short, intimate piece by Albeniz. Tango by title, but as I said, these terms seem to be interchangeable somehow, especially in Albeniz's mind or era, and it maybe represents more of the style as we now know as the habanera. The next question, the next issue which I am going to move on to, which many people ask me generally, is that of memory and musical memory, and how I or how any pianist memorizes music. The first issue is that this is something which is part of the training, and certainly part of something that I was expected to do and trained to do from my very first piano lessons. I remember having piano lessons when I started when I was 7 years old, which I took to. I found them very enjoyable, and I thought it was a very exciting possibility, even more exciting when I found out that I was going to play in a concert in front of other people. And part of this process was in the preparation for this, of how to deal with this and how to go about this, and not just be thrown into a situation that I was not going to be familiar with, even though it was a very intimate concert. But it was expected and explained that I then had to play this piece of music without the sheet music in front of me, which was not a problem. But it was always that it was checked, and that I would go through it and be sure, repeating and rehearsing it, that it was something that not just you decided in the last minute to do. So musical memory works, especially at the piano for me, and I'm talking about pianistically, works like reading, I think. It's about comprehending everything that is in front of you in a kind of shorthand. When we read, we don't literally read letter for letter. We are able to grasp words, sentences, and phrases quite quickly at a time. There's a certain expectation of how the grammar is going to work and how the syntax is going to fit together and what is going to be happening. And it's the same with music. It's not just a series of random notes. They are patterns and structures which govern the entire set of music as liedjes as we know it up until, as I say, sort of the early 20th century. One of the most important things, and I always hear when many students say, well, they don't want to practice scales or arpeggios and things like that, is scales and arpeggios really give you that building block. So scales are in every key you can play, and arpeggios, the chords. Those are the chords. The chords, the arpeggios spelling out the chords, and the scales are the building blocks of music. And on the keyboard, they're particularly important because they really give you a sense of how the structure of the keyboard works and how your hands fit at that particular structure of black and white notes as you play them. And the more you absorb this over years and years of practicing, it becomes almost like a tactile sense, I find, that I know what B major scale is going to feel like under my hands, and I know what a C sharp major chord will feel like, or an F sharp major chord in a particular voicing. It's somehow become a language that your hands begin to understand and learn. And so when you're reading, even when you're reading a piece of music for the first time, you're able to assimilate these patterns because you actually know them very well. You're able to take them in at a glance quite quickly. And that's what sight reading is. When people put a piece of music in front of you that you've never seen before and you can read, you're not reading every note, you're reading the patterns of chords, depending how complicated it is. And if it's very complicated, it can become very difficult. So I found that all that idea of chords, of arpeggios and scales is very important, and I think my mind thinks very much in terms of chords. So when I'm memorizing a piece, or when I'm learning a piece, I'll get to a point where I feel, okay, I kind of know this well enough, and I stop looking at the music, or even I will say I will actually then work on the memory side and start understanding and checking where the gaps are. And I'll be literally be able to, through, and this is how memory really happens, partly through being able to visualize the music. Sometimes I can actually see what the music looks like photographically on the page because I've looked at it for long enough. Other times I will be able to understand and feel how that chord, or which chord at any particular time it really is, how it feels. So it's a muscle memory issue. I'll be able to understand how it actually sounds in my ear. So it's a memory, hearing memory. And then also, once you start engaging in the more emotional aspects of the music. You might say, or that moment for me, which is quite magical, when you kind of take the music away and the music starts to fly. You really start to build the process of bringing all those musical thoughts together into a linear whole. That's when the real magic happens. And the more you rehearse that, the more that process becomes fluid. And so it really is a combination of that. It's a combination of your photographic memory, of visual memory, of what the keyboard feels like under your fingers, what the notes sound like in your ear, your emotional thread that you're following through. But the one element which I find that I rely on, and that actually is very important, is also what it looks like. And I'm memorizing, and I'm often being able to see what the chord patterns and the scale patterns look like in my hands. So once you get to a point where you feel that the piece is reasonably comfortable and you start to try and run it, or even if you do run it, it's always very important to go back and actually constantly check and really understand what's going on. Never to take it for granted that you actually know, because there are many things that can go wrong. There are many points in almost all music written between, all the music we play has melodies which we play once and they return. And another melodies which play once, but they return again in a different key. So for instance, the piece of music I'm going to play for you, the Sonata in F by Mozart, the first movement, is the opening theme. Halfway through the music, the theme will come back. The first time, a contrasting theme is in the key of, I can't remember. I've muddled up now. So that's the second time it comes back, because now that's in the home key of F major. But the first time it would be, see, this is the problem. I'm trying to delve into the middle of a piece of music in my head without actually being aware of it. Let me just find this quickly, and then I can get it right. Okay, so the first time it comes. The second time it comes back, later on in the movement. So there's a whole chunk, there's about 2-3 pages that you play the music in one key, and later on in the same piece, you play the same 2 or 3 pages, but in a completely different key. Now, this is the kind of thing that one has to then consciously check, not only to be sure of which key fits where and how they lead together, but most importantly, as to where the shift changes. Because remember, I'm starting to play the same melody, and one time I'm going. Then I come back to, and then it's, so somewhere in between there's a pattern that changes, and one has to be so careful. It literally can rest on one note that happens in a split second. And if you're not 100% clear and precise at that point, it can really lead you down the garden path, and you can find yourself going completely in the wrong way. Either, unfortunately, in a circle that keeps going back that you can't get out of, or it happens to me more that I go to the second one and the piece becomes very short. For instance, I've joked about this often. I played in a concert once when I was much younger. Little piece I played last week, Schumann. So you'll see that little phrase. Keeps coming back, but keeps leading to a different point. And I'm actually going to have to get the music to do this because I probably won't be able to repeat it, but it'll be quite funny when I show you what happened. This is what I played in the concert. Becomes the world's shortest piece of music ever written. Instead of going through all the steps of 5, 6 repeats, I went straight from the first one directly to the last one. It made perfect sense, but I just left everything out. So that was a rather awkward moment. These are the kind of things you have to check. Also with memory, it seems to me to be something that, touch wood, I don't like to talk about because it's a mystery. Having played the piano for 45 years of my life, I don't really understand how it works. There is a lot of trust. It is just a matter of analysis, assurance, and belief. There's no way to actually be 100% sure that it is foolproof, and it is every pianist, every performing musician's biggest fear that you actually sometimes do lose your way. I've never, touch wood, come to a point where I've lost my way completely. And there have been moments, and one of the most frightening moments that happens to me, I think also because of the amount of repertoire that I play, is that I will learn a piece of music and I'll be playing, and as I say, because of understanding these chords and sometimes thinking about them that way, I'll be playing more or less the right notes or the right melodies, but making up my own improvised version. So instead of playing a Chopin nocturne, for instance, I'll be thinking and I'll be playing something like, sort of an improvised version, guessing for the notes, not remembering the fingering, trying to find, I know it sounds something like that, and I'm sure I know more or less what the notes are, but the actual precise pattern of it is not quite with me at that point. I remember reading about the pianist Alfred Brendel that he said that he stopped performing earlier in his career Mozart piano concertos from memory, because Mozart wrote 4 piano concertos in the key of B flat, and Mozart reuses a lot of the same patterns again and again in different pieces of music. And he said he would find he'd be playing a run and then found that he had actually ended up in a completely different piano concerto, because the leading runs up to those points were exactly the same, and if you were 100% sure, you could really get yourself into the wrong place, which when you're with an orchestra, of course, is a big problem. So I am going to play for you this Mozart sonata. I am going to play it from the memory. I mean, watch me having just told you about all of this and how it works that I get it wrong, but I'm sure I'll find my way through. This is the first movement from the sonata in F major K332, and you'll see how some of the material returns later in a different key in a different place. Mozart Piano Sonata K332 in F major, and just to point out to you that exact point, it's over in a flash, but that exact point where the pattern changes, the first time the second time this happens, here, right here, there's a change. It happens in one note. And if you get that note wrong, you go completely down the wrong path, sending yourself down the garden path, which is not a good thing at all. I see we're running out of time, so I'm going to end off briefly with one of the questions which came to me, which was asked, or two questions briefly. I'm going to leave the issue about why composers compose in different keys, because it's a really fascinating subject, and I'd like to show you or demonstrate various ideas, possibilities around that. But briefly to tell you, someone asked, what does it mean to be a Steinway artist? Why am I a Steinway artist, and how does that work? And many people think that Steinway give me a free piano, which unfortunately they don't. It would be nice, but it's not possible. Steinway artist is something I'm incredibly proud of. It's an acknowledgement or an accolade or an invitation to be part of an endorsement process by the world's acknowledged as the world's premier piano makers, Steinway and Sons. And this only happens by invitation. You have to be a Steinway owner. And here is, if just in case anyone's wondering whether it actually is true, this is a screenshot from the Steinway website. And if you go there, if you look at steinway.com, you'll be led to the website and see all the Steinway artists. People include like Diana Krall are there, Billy Joel, Harry Connick, jazz pianists, the classical pianists, obviously Murray Pariah, all the great classical pianists. And I'm very pleased to be the fifth pianist in South African history to be invited to be on the Steinway artist roster. This comes about only through invitation. First of all, to be a Steinway owner. Secondly, they invite pianists that they choose, or I'm invited on the profile, the visibility that I enjoy, the profile of the concerts and the number of concerts that I do. And then secondly, also most importantly, on the artistic integrity, the standard that I uphold, and the quality of the work that I consistently produce as a concert pianist, a concertizing pianist. There are about approximately now 1,500 Steinway artists in the world. And I had the great opportunity of visiting the Steinway factory in Germany. The maker of Steinway, Mr. Steinweg, left Germany in, I think, the early 1840 or somewhere around there, and went to New York. He was a piano maker. He had decided to make the world's best piano, but immigrated to America and became John Steinway. Steinweg became Steinway, and he established his company in New York, and years later then re-established a second branch or a second factory for Steinway and Sons piano manufacturers in Germany and Hamburg. So there are two factories for Steinway and Sons, one in Germany and one in America, New York. And interestingly enough, they actually make different pianos. They not only are visually a little bit different, there are a few design details on the casework which you can immediately tell whether it's an American Steinway or a Hamburg or German Steinway. But actually the materials are slightly different, and the sound world that they aim to produce, I think, and is generally acknowledged, is slightly different. The American Steinways might have a slightly more brighter or metallic sound, generally, and the Hamburg Steinways may be a metallic sound, generally, and the Hamburg Steinways may be a more richer or neutral or richer, colorful sound, you might say. And generally around the world, if you are in America, in the North or South America, you'll be able to purchase a Steinway from the American factory. If you're on the rest of the world in Europe, including Africa and South Africa, you would have purchased a piano from the Hamburg factory. So my Steinway own secretly, I'll tell you this. Don't tell anyone. I actually own 3 Steinways. They're not brand new. I have a collection of pianos. We joke about my pianos being a herd or a school. We're not quite sure, which would be a herd of pianos. But I own a number of pianos which are stationed at various venues, which I play at usually before COVID on a monthly basis, and amongst these are 3 Steinways. My principal Steinway, which is my principal piano, is a Model B Steinway made in the Hamburg factory, which I very fortunately came to my presence and purchased, first of all, by my very good friends Gilly and Owen Walters when they established the Wedgwood their home at Wedgwood, and they built it into a concert hall, really, where we had concerts. And this piano came up for sale. It's very rare. I have never seen another Steinway of that size, a 7-foot Steinway, come up for sale anywhere in this part of the world. And they very fortunately purchased it to make our concerts possible, and the concerts for me. And after that, after they decided not to do the concerts anymore, I purchased the piano from them. It is currently undergoing reconstruction or rebuilt. After 70 odd years, it has been taken a lot of wear, even from the amount of practicing that I've done on it. So it is undergoing a complete rebuild, new strings, new hammers, the casework will be redone. Unfortunately, I have just run out of funds to actually support that. It is not cheap, and it is a rather costly affair, but it is going to be done and has been in the process of being done slowly, bit by bit, by the expert certified Steinway and Sons rebuilders Ian Burgess Simpson in Cape Town. I often receive calls from people locally who have Steinways that they've inherited, that they've owned for many years, or that they've inherited. They've had them repaired and fixed by a number of piano technicians, dealers locally or in various parts of the world, and the results are not satisfactory. And then they phone and ask, well, what is the problem? And well, there are certain things. There's a very specific method and a very certain insight into rebuilding a Steinway that only a certified Steinway builder who is actually certified and trained and done the training course or the concert technician's course at Steinway itself will know. And it's a very high level of expertise to actually make the piano sound like it can. And Steinway pianos for me are absolutely magical. In that graphic, which I'm going to ask Andrew to bring up, when I was invited to be a Steinway artist, I was asked to submit a short quote, as is every Steinway artist, to include on their website and on their endorsement. Part of the contract is that I will only play on a Steinway piano unless another piano another piano is not available, unless a Steinway of suitable quality is not available to the performance. And it's such an amazing experience to play a wonderful Steinway. I always, as I say in the quote, when I sit down at a Steinway, I anticipate a wonderful world of imagination, of sound. It is just the most incredible world to be able to venture into musically, when you sit and play at a beautifully tuned, regulated and magnificent piano like that. It really is a wonderful experience, and it's something that I'm very proud of, to be associated with such an iconic brand. So I'm going to play out. As I said to Andrew in the beginning, I'm running short of time. So I am going to leave the last issue as well about the live stream program, just to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting me. I am going to talk about that at another date. It has been a very, very exciting program for me. It's been a wonderful opportunity to keep myself focused on these 2 live streams. It's been incredible hard work, twice a week, to produce a new program of music, practicing all the setup. I've learned an incredible amount about the technical setup of live streaming, the setup of including all the decor and everything that I do, the titles and the research around the program, setting up the stream. It's really kept me very focused, which I'm very, very grateful for, actually, in this last COVID year. And it's also been a wonderful opportunity. I've never listened to myself play so much before. After each performance, I listen to it that night, and probably 2 or 3 times I've listened to hours and hours and hours of my own playing, and I've learned so much from the recordings about my own performance, my own presentation, what music works, how I can change things, what I think is working and it doesn't. It's been an incredibly rewarding and positive experience, and now that the setup is in place, we will definitely be carrying on with the live stream program at 2 a week indefinitely. Once things and live concerts return, we might not be doing as many, but we certainly will be doing on a regular basis our live stream program now that we've got the hang of it, and viewers from around the world can enjoy these sessions. And one of the great ambitions now that I'm really thinking about, it's going to be a real test of my stamina and multitasking, is that normally on a monthly basis, I used to, before all this happened with live concerts, I used to present a monthly concert here in my home for between about 40 people, and I'd also prepare a meal for them. And it's one of the most popular events, and one of the most gratifying things that I've heard is that so many people have missed the opportunity now being able to come to our home, to be able to enjoy the simple food that I prepare and enjoy the music in our venue, in this beautiful space with the dogs. And so many people have really longed for it. They just love the atmosphere. So my big ambition now is to be able to do that, present the concert, prepare the meal, and present a live stream of the performance at the same time. Of course, you're not going to be able to live stream the food and the meal that I prepare, but you'll be able to have a total experience of a live concert with an audience in the room. It's going to be an incredibly complicated and detailed experience, but it's something that I'm going to be looking forward to with great excitement. So just coming back to that quote about the Steinway artist and the musical world and how magical music is, I'd like to play for you the beautiful Arabesque No. 1 by Claude Debussy. truly magical music there. The Arabesque #1 by Claude Debussy, bringing our program this evening of question and answers to a close. Lastly, I'd just like to repeat how grateful I am for everyone who has been supporting me and spontaneously offering donations, paying in tickets to my bank account or through Quicket or through one of the various PayPal and PayFast platforms. It's been a very uncertain time for me, to be sure, that every week or every month I'm really not sure. I've got no idea. I'm not charging for any of these concerts and performances, and this is the entire work output that I'm doing at the moment, but I'm never quite sure what's actually coming in. And it's an absolute leap of faith that I keep doing this, and that suddenly at the end of the month my bank account has got more funds in it and the level has been increased and the overdraft's a little bit less than it was before. So I'm very, very grateful to everyone who has supported me, and it's been a really fantastic opportunity for me to venture out and reach such a new audience. I know there are many people who are watching who are experiencing classical music for the first time, or this idea of even live performance, and be able to do it on their own terms and in such a convenient and useful way where people can rewind and revisit and experience the programs they'd like to see again. It's an incredibly exciting medium that I wish and look forward to exploring more. And on that, I will be starting quite soon and quite shortly a specific series of pieces in a different way, which will be able to view it at your own convenience, behind the music, where I really dissect and give you a much more detailed insight into particular pieces of music. Thank you to Andrew for his technical support this evening. Now we've got everyone's here. Look, here is Wendy and Frida and Lucy. You all here. Are you all going to come? Are you going to come for a hug? I was trying to give Lucy a little bit of a death stare just now because she was barking furiously. Come, Frida. Come on. Let's kiss, Frida. Oh, your back is sore. No. Come, say hello. Say hello to everyone, Frida. Yes. What have you been up to? Oh, not much. You've just been having a good time. Yes, you enjoyed the music this evening. Yeah, it was a nice selection. Frida's really enjoyed the selection. You've had a great time, a live stream series. It wasn't so nice because your back didn't do so well in September last year, and then you were in the hospital for a while. But your back's doing better now. Huh? It's not quite right, but it is doing better. Hey, Freedy Pop. And Lucy, come on, everyone. Oh, Wendy Pop's here. Oh, everyone wants to come. Come on, little Wendy Pop. You want to jump up? See? Come on, Wendy Pop, Wendy Pop, Wendy Pop. Got to keep you away from the microphone. Come. Oh, you're doing a little groan. There's Wendy Pop, Wendy Pop, Wendy Pop. And Wendy Pop, how have you enjoyed the last year of live streaming? Oh, it's been fantastic. Yes, because we haven't gone anywhere. We've stayed at home. Yes, I've been at home for a whole year. I haven't gone anywhere. No overseas trips. No trips to Franschhoek or Cape Town or Johannesburg. Just always a nice cuddly snuggy bed to lie in. Isn't that been great fun? Huh? And here's little Lucy. Everyone wants to see. Come, Lucy. Come on, Lucy. Come on, Lucy. Come on, Freddie. Come, Lucy. Come on, Lucy. Come on. Don't be all difficult now. Come on, there's little Lucy. Come on, Lucy. And you've also enjoyed it. Yes, the live stream series has been fantastic. You've become the star of the show. Little Lucy, the long-haired dachshund, wants to be the star of the live stream. Lucy, you're going to have to have your own show soon. You must start a YouTube channel for me. I want my own. I'll have more followers than you. Thanks, Luce. Do you think you're going to have more followers than me if you're on YouTube regularly? Yes. What can you do on YouTube? You'll do product endorsements. Okay. Oh, that would be fun. And sleeping. Little Luce. Look how cute your face is. And your big furry paws. Yes. Piano playing paws. That'd be good for playing the piano. Yes, you're also very grateful for everyone who's been supporting us. It's made everything possible for you. Kept you warm at night, I know that. Right, well, thank you very much for joining us today. We run way over time. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday night. I have a very exciting, very rewarding, and I'm sure a very engaging experience for you on Saturday when I'll be playing the music of Franz Liszt and exploring the idea about why Liszt's music and performance ideas are so important. And this includes a performance of the Dante Sonata, which is it's the most dramatic thing that I've played on the live stream in the last year. It's a big piece. It's very dramatic. It's very impressive if it works. And it's going to be very, very exciting. So do join us, please, on Saturday at 6 p.m. He leaves me to say to look after yourselves. Please keep well, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our next live streams. If I haven't answered your question, or if you have more questions for me, I know that I was going to be looking at Facebook Live. Please, I haven't managed to be able to do that with all the technical issues going on, but please type your questions if you are there on my page or on any one of the pages on Facebook where this is being streamed, and I'll do my best to answer the questions right there for you, and will point you in the right direction, or to look forward to actually including them in one of the future streams. We've been really amazed at the number of questions that have come through and how interested and interesting the queries are. So I look forward to seeing you then. Ask away and we'll do our best. Keep well, stay well. See you on Saturday.